Hey there, it's Mitzi. Welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to review Christy by Catherine Marshall. And this is important to me because you chose it. And I am so grateful to you for voting for this book. Now, if you follow my channel, you know that I posted a video maybe a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, asking you to choose my next read because I wanted to participate in the Historical Fiction Readathon hosted by Katie at Books and Things. I'll leave a link to that below because it's taking place during the entire month of May and there's all sorts of prompts. But because I was hosting my own readathon for short stories, the Short Reads 22 readathon, I was too busy with that and I didn't think I could fulfill all the prompts, but I love historical fiction, so I asked you to choose from 4 different books. And this was the clear winner for that post. So thank you for choosing this one. This book has it surprised me in so many ways. I found this book in a basket that sits outside my favorite secondhand bookstore. I go to this secondhand bookstore at least once a month, sometimes more than that. When the kids were little, we would always go on Friday nights to this bookstore because it's a pretty large bookstore and there's a lot of new and more than that used books there, and I have found so many treasures. But anyway, right outside they have this little bin of free books, and this was in there, and I've had it on my shelf for a long time. I have always been interested in reading it but never drawn to it. And the reason is they made a movie about this in the 1990s, I think. But this was written in 1967, and the Christy Awards is named after this book because Catherine Marshall was like a pioneer writer for the Christian publishing community. So I've always been interested for that reason. I have a lot of friends who have won the Christy Award. I'm very familiar with that award, and so this now just means that award even means more to me now because I've read the book, and I can see why it was named after this book, because it just touched me so deeply. It just, in such a surprising way. I mean, there were times, I'm just going to be completely honest, I would read and I would just start reading and tears would just flow. And I'm like, why am I crying over this? I mean, there are some tough things in here and there are some sad moments, but it wasn't even that. It was something within my spirit that it touched me in a way. And I think it's because I've always been drawn to the mountains. When I was a little girl, we would, travel to the Smoky Mountains, and we spent a lot of time there on vacations and things. My daddy loved the mountains, and so we would go there a lot, and there's a place called Cades Cove near Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and we would go there, and it's that kind of community. It reminded me a lot of Cades Cove. There was a community that lived there for many years, and these communities within the Smoky Mountains were so isolated that they were behind a lot of times. There wasn't electricity or indoor plumbing for many years, even after other people had those things, no telephones, those kind of things. And so it reminded me of that, and I've always thought about the isolation, but also the advantage of that isolation was they were able to hold on to certain things like the mountain music and things like that. They were able to hold on to things from 100 years before because they had not been infiltrated into the rest of the world. So that just fascinates me. So I'm sure there's a lot of cons to that, but there were also some things that were amazingly beautiful about it as well. So first of all, that amazed me, and I love Appalachian kind of books. I love anything set in that area, and I'm always drawn to those. So first of all, that's one of the reasons I love this book, because the setting was perfect for me. But it takes place in Cutter Gap, Tennessee, which is supposed to be this town, like I mentioned, this isolated town it doesn't have indoor plumbing, they don't have electricity or any of those things. The girl Christy, the main character, is at this revival meeting, and she's like a city girl. She lives in Asheville, North Carolina, and this is the year 1912. And at this revival meeting or camp meeting or whatever it is, the missionary mentions a need for a teacher at this school in Cutter Gap, and she is just so moved by his presentation that at the end she goes immediately forward and says, I want to volunteer, I want to be a teacher, not knowing anything about these people or this area or this way of life. So she gets on the train and she goes as this young girl, this naive girl who knows nothing about it. And I guess that moved me as well, because I was a school teacher for many years, and I remember the innocence of that, how naive I was before entering the classroom. You know, I had all these high hopes of how I was going to change the world because I was, you know, going to be the best teacher ever. And then reality sets in and you deal with a lot of things that you never could imagine. And so that's what happens here in this story. So of course I was moved by that as well. But there would be days that I would just open it up and it would not be a difficult passage, because there are a lot of hard things in here. There's some very sad moments. But it wouldn't even be that. It would just be reading about her experience, and I would just, tears would just flow. And I'm like, why am I crying over this book? But it touched me so deeply, because it's about this girl who moves to this town and her experience with these people who the rest of the world sees as backward and, you know, not smart enough and kind of just throwaway people. And her struggles with trying to care for them and love for them because of her own prejudices within her own life, and how she has assumed things and made assumptions. And it's that struggle, as well as the other people in the town. There is a Quaker woman, and it's her point of view. There is a preacher who has built this school that is both a church on Sunday and a school during the week. And then there is a doctor who was born and raised in this community, but due to some fortunate circumstances, he was able to go be trained as a doctor, and he moved back to help his people, basically. So you get all these different perspectives in this community, as well as from the people themselves, because she befriends several of the ladies in this community. It is about isolation. It is about mainly faith, and her faith as a Christian woman moving into this community, and her purpose in life, how she is wanting to do what God wants her to do, and then she starts questioning that. It's also about struggles with faith with the preacher and with the doctor and the Quaker woman as well. And they're different takes on what it means to be faithful and live out your purpose and those struggles. I love this book mainly, though, because it's not so preachy. Oftentimes there's like these books, they have a reputation in the Christian publishing world, in the fiction area, that they have this formula. And so somebody, if you're a Christian, you have this aha moment with God at this certain point. I mean, I can tell you the page that it comes to. So I don't like that. I don't like the preachiness. I don't like the way that it's set up, as if because I'm a Christian I want to read that, because I don't. But they're just not for me. That is not what I want from a Christian book, because for me, my faith is more about the struggles of everyday life and real living. And that's what I love about this book, because it is, there's just so much truth in this about life is not a bed of roses. Everything doesn't end well. There are a lot of tragic things that happen, and there are a lot of things in everyday situations that test your faith, and you have to come to terms with what you believe as opposed to what everybody else believes. And I love that every perspective is represented in here. There are people that, like for instance, the people that live in the mountains in this area, they have, a lot of them are faith people, Christian people, but there's also all of these superstitions and folklore that they have intertwined within their faith. And again, I could relate to that because my grandmama was superstitious as I'll get out. She, my family were not wealthy people. I don't know what you think my family was like, but here in South Carolina, I was raised in a cotton mill town, and we were not rich. We were not the rich people. And my dad's people, they were tenant farmers, so they didn't even own their land, and there was a bunch of them. I think Daddy was like the 13th of all these kids or something. My grandma was very superstitious, and so there were a lot of things that she, like, I think she paid some guy, a boy, I think it had to be a boy, to come to her house first on New Year's Day. It was stuff like that. You couldn't wash clothes on New Year's, and there was a lot of superstitions. So I could relate to that too, and I'm getting off track. But anyway, in here, there's a lot of those kind of things, and they have intertwined those superstitions with and folklore within their other beliefs, their faith in God. And so that was interesting to see as well. Christy, the main character, comes into this situation where she's trying to get to know these people and relate to them and understand where they're coming from when it's just so foreign to her. Even though she doesn't live that far away from this town, they are so isolated that it's like living on another planet pretty much. So anyway, I love the truth of that. I love that faith is messy. It's not, you know, black and white, easy. How do you deal with these situations? It's not as easy as all that. And then there are struggles with one of the characters who doesn't even believe at all. I don't want to say too much, but it really shocked me what he had to say about Jesus and his miracles. And here he is talking about Scripture and the Bible, and he don't even believe it. So I don't know, there's just every kind of perspective on the Christian faith is represented. So I like that about it. And it's her figuring out her purpose. What is she here for? And her faith. What does she think about the Bible? Does she believe the Bible? Because there's many times when things just do not go her way, and some horrible things happen that she doesn't understand why bad things happen to good people, sort of things in here. There's a lot of that in here. And so whether you're a Christian or not, I think you could get a lot out of this book because it's from so many different perspectives. It is Christy, who is a Christian, but there's also her wrestling with that faith within this book. And it touched me and moved me in such a way, such a powerful way, that I am so thankful that I read this one. And again, I will be rereading it. I want to go back and just kind of look through the tabs, because as I was going, I just had to tab so many things. And it just touched me so deeply. So definitely a 5-star read for me. I do hope you'll pick it up if you haven't read it. This will be perfect for historical fiction. If you do like the Appalachian mountain kind of stories, you probably would enjoy this. I tend to be drawn to those kind of stories. I love mountain people kind of stories. I love the Great Smoky Mountains because I visit there often. I told my husband the other day, we need to go to Pigeon Forge because I need one of those fried apple pies. There is a place, if you ever in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and for years, we spent every Thanksgiving pretty much for years in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. I mean, I would take my turkey and bake my turkey and everything in a cabin there. So I love that area. But in Pigeon Forge, in downtown Pigeon Forge, there is a place called the Apple Barn. And if you like apple pies, go to the Apple Barn, get you a fried apple pie and some hot apple cider, and it is just the most delicious thing you'll ever have. But I do like that area, and of course that area is a tourist attraction. It's not these people, but there is a place not far from there called Cades Cove where they still have some of the buildings of some people that lived there that are very similar to the people in Cutter Gap, which is in this story. So those are my thoughts on Christy by Catherine Marshall. I do hope that you will pick it up if you haven't read it. If you have read it, let me know your thoughts as well in the comments. And again, thank you so much for choosing this for my read for the Historical Fiction Readathon. I do hope to get to Sarah's Key as well. That was the other book that came in second. It was the runner-up. So maybe I can get to that one too. And if I do, I will leave a review for that one as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.